scenario from a big-budget disaster film. Cataclysmic storms drive millions of people from their homes into already overcrowded cities. But it's already a reality in Bangladesh, where people are deserting flood and cyclone-prone areas and pouring into sprawling urban slums.
পানি যে তলাই গেছে আমগো বারিন দেয় পরে আমরা সবাই ঘর দিয়ে নামিয়ে গেছি কি করতেছে আমগো গরু ছাগল আছিল সব গেছে খালি কয়টা গরু আছে দুই তিনটা একটা সব গেছে ছাগল আছিল আসমুর আছিল সব গেছে বান্ডবাড়ি সব
Rajol comes from the country's south, an area not only hit by devastating cyclones and floods. Rising sea levels and tidal surges have also turned the land saline, reduced crop yields, and made water unfit for drinking. She now lives with her children in a tiny one-room shack in Dhaka's largest slum.
Up to 400,000 people move to Dhaka each year, and the International Organization for Migration estimates that some 70% of the people living in Dhaka's slums moved here because of some kind of environmental shock.
Life for people like Rajol is one of uncertainty and struggle, where even a squatter's shack comes at a cost.
ধরো ওইখানেই ভালো আসছিল দেশের না কি শহরে পাওয়া যায় না এই জায়গা ধরো ভাড়া দিয়ে থা লাগে হেরা লাগে শহরে দেশেই ভালো ছিল গ্রামে যাই না ধরেন আমাকে ঘর বাড়ি কিছুই নেই
In a normal year, 3 out of 10 Bangladeshis are affected by flooding. In a bad year, that goes up to 7 out of 10.
So if climate change impact is there, then huge population might be displaced. Their livelihood can be threatened. And we are considering that large scale migration, especially in internal displacement, can happen, and that may affect the internal stability of the country.
Over the past 20 years, Bangladesh has suffered 60% of the world's fatalities from cyclones. But working with international agencies, local civil society groups, and communities, it has significantly reduced that death toll.
The government has put in place a very elaborate, a very comprehensive system of community-based awareness raising, so everybody is aware the dangers of cyclones and that they will heed the warnings from the government the minute these warnings are issued. At the community level, there are disaster management committees in place, and there are continuous drills, and in fact these issues also taught at schools, which is very, very important.
More than 3,000 multi-purpose cyclone shelters like this have been built in the most vulnerable areas.
তখন আমরা রাস্তায় উঠে আশ্রয় নিতাম তারপরে গাছে উঠে তারপর ছাদের উপরে যে আশ্রয় নিতাম
This teacher works in a new school building that doubles as a cyclone shelter and now worries far less about the safety of herself, her child, and her students. The building is designed to withstand winds of up to 240 kilometers per hour, as well as a magnitude 7 earthquake. It can accommodate up to 2,000 people and 200 livestock in case of an evacuation.
এখানে যারা শেল্টার নিচ্ছে তারা সবই দুস্থ মানুষ এদের মূল সম্বল হলো তাদের গবাদি পশু সুতরাং এই পশুগুলো যদি সাইক্লোনের সময় হারায় যায় তাহলে তারা আসলে অত্যন্ত গরিব হয়ে পড়বে সব কিছু হারায় পড়বে
এইটা হওয়ার পরে অনেক আমাদের সুবিধা হয়েছে বাচ্চারা স্কুলে আসে আমাদের পাঠদানেও সুবিধা হচ্ছে হ্যাঁ এর আগে আমাদের অনেক গরু ছাগল যেমন মানুষেরও অসুস্থ হয়েছে অনেক বাচ্চা ডায়রিয়ায় মারা গেছে
Fishermen suffer too. The water's too salty for freshwater fish to thrive, but not salty enough for marine fish. Even water extracted from 100 meters below the ground is still unfit for human consumption, driving people like Sharifa Khatun to desperate and risky measures.
পানি যখন এই ভালো পানি যখন ছিল না তখন তো আমাদের অসুখ লেগেই থাকতো, দেখা যাচ্ছে পেটের অসুখ লেগেই থাকতো। ভালো পানি যেহেতু পেতাম না এখানে, আমাদের আশেপাশে যে শ্যালো টিউবওয়েলগুলো ছিল, যারা লুনা পানি আর্সেনিকযুক্ত আছে, কোথাও আয়রনযুক্ত, সেগুলোও খেতাম। আমরা দেখা যাচ্ছে যে পুকুরের পিএসএফের পানিটাও নিয়ে আসতাম, আমরা ওই পানিগুলোই খেতাম।
Desalination and treatment plants like this are bringing relief. But there's still too few, and many people have to travel several kilometers to get drinking water.
এখন এই প্ল্যান্টটা হওয়ার পরে আমরা এখান থেকে পানি নিয়ে যাচ্ছি 40 টাকা লিটার দরে। আসলে পানি এত ভালো পানির মান যে এই পানি খেয়ে আমাদের মানে পেটের যে অসুখগুলো হয়, মূলত যে আমাশা, ডায়রিয়া, এই অসুখগুলো নেই বললেই চলে।
These plinth villages are equipped with solar power and rainwater collection systems. The government has also reinforced hundreds of kilometers of riverbanks and replanted tens of millions of trees. But Bangladesh is looking beyond just mitigating the impact of climate change. It wants to help people adapt to the changes. Millions of farmers have been taught to make floating vegetable gardens and to grow crops on dikes, while others are using saline-resistant strains of crops. Groups funded by agencies like the World Bank are also helping people switch from raising cows, which struggle in salty conditions, to the more hardy sheep.
আগে ভেড়ার কাজে ভেড়া পালন করতাম, তা সে মাটি ঘাস ছিল, তা সে জায়গায় কাদা মাটি গায়ে লেগে তা সে সেনাটা কষ্ট করতাম না। তাই এই যে ট্রেনিংয়ের পরে এই ঘরটা দেশে যে এখন ভালো সুবিধা হয়েছে, অনেক ভেড়া হয়েছে। আগে মাসে মাসে 3-4 হাজার টাকা করে বিক্রি করি প্রত্যেক মাসে, আর 12,000 টাকা বিক্রি করেছি।
People here have also been taught to rear salt-tolerant mud crabs, for which there is local and international demand.
অনেক পরিবর্তন হচ্ছে, ছেলেমেয়ের লেখাপড়া শেখাতে পারতেছি। আমি এইটা হলো আগে খোলামেলা জায়গায় ছাড়তাম, চল যেত চালা করি, উঠি হলো নদীতে যেত। আমরা এটা পাওয়ার পরে অনেক উন্নত হয়েছি, ছেলেমেয়ের এখন লেখাপড়া শেখাতে পারতেছি, বা হলো এখন চলে যায় না, অনেক ভালো লাভবান হয়েছি।
Bangladesh doesn't only face the problem of flooding and rising sea levels, but some parts of the country also suffer from drought, and erratic rainfall has become an increasing problem.
Bangladesh may not be able to stem the tide of climate change, but it's trying to ensure its people can adapt to and survive that change, so that millions of people would no longer be forced to follow this woman's path to the congested alleys and zinc-roofed shacks of its urban slums.
Over the past 100 years, no other natural disaster in the U.S. has caused more death and destruction than floods. They can happen any place, any day, any time. And they will likely only get worse. As people cluster around coastal regions and floodplains, our growing population will confront the awesome power of water. For thousands of years, farmers have depended on seasonal floods. The waters irrigated their crops and fertilized their lands. Today, excess water is channeled into reservoirs and power hydroelectric dams. But when water levels rise suddenly, far more than the ground can absorb, a flood occurs. Flash floods are a perfect example. Sudden storms unleash a torrential downpour. The runoff moves with surprising force. At a depth of 2 feet, the water can push aside a car. In fact, half of all deaths from flash floods involve vehicles. But floods occur in many other ways. Heavy rains and thawing snowfall can overwhelm rivers. Storm surges caused by hurricanes and tsunamis inundate the coastline. Landslides and mud flows can displace large volumes of water. Dams break, levees fail. In the Great Mississippi Flood of 1993, several of these factors came into play. Over 10,000 square miles of the Midwestern United States were overwhelmed with rain. In a cruel twist, the earthen dams known as levees along the upper Mississippi River forced the water to flow downstream faster and stronger. Communities further downriver were hit with the full brunt of the Mississippi. 2/3 of all the levees were breached. Though towns rallied to protect their lives and livelihoods, the damage was still immense. Over $10 billion in damages, 56,000 homes flooded or destroyed, and some 50 people were killed. At the start of this century, another powerful flood wreaked havoc, this one coming from the sea. The storm surges of Hurricane Katrina submerged 80% of the city of New Orleans. Over 1,800 people died in the floods. The damage has been estimated at over $80 billion. In some ways, the New Orleans disaster was unique. Much of the city lies below sea level, and despite years of warning, the city was woefully unprepared to handle a breach of the levees which kept it dry. But we are still vulnerable. Sea levels may rise, coastlines could erode, rain patterns might change, snowpacks could melt, and then the waters would rush in.